Hello and good evening. My name is Catherine from SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 20 affordable rental units at Hanover, Weymouth in Weymouth, Massachusetts. So the purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the affordable units and let you know what the eligibility and lottery process is as well, and what to expect after the lottery. So I have some slides I'll be flipping through, as you can see on your screen here. Throughout the session tonight. If you have any questions during the session, you're encouraged to either type them into the Zoom chat function, or you can unmute yourself to ask that question. I'll be asking you throughout the session if you have any questions to follow up with. And as you heard, as you entered the room, this meeting is being recorded, and it'll be available on SEB Housing's YouTube channel after tonight. And then if you have any questions after tonight, as you can see on your screen, info@sebhousing.com, that's the easiest way to get in touch with us by email. There's also a phone number, that 617 phone number that's on your screen that you could contact us at. If you think of anything after tonight that you want to run by us, please feel free to contact us. So just some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we're an off-site affordable housing consulting group. We're not the on-site management team for the building. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable units, conduct this information session, collect and review applications to determine an applicant's eligibility, and then to eventually run the lottery for these homes. So in the initial phases, we are your main point of contact rather than the management team. But further along in the process, the on-site management team in Weymouth will be your main point of contact. So there's a few steps in the process. The first is to apply for the lottery and be found eligible and to qualify for the affordable housing program based on the application that you submit. You'll be in touch with SEB Housing during that time, and we can answer any questions you have on the affordable housing program. We'll process your application, and we will run the lottery. The second step in the process, you'll be in touch with the leasing office, and they'll be doing the lease eligibility screening. So that's separate from the screenings that you'll have with SEB Housing. It's typical landlord, property owner checks, such as a credit check, rental history check, criminal background check, that sort of thing that you may be familiar with if you've rented before. And then the third and final step in the process is once you've been approved by the management team or the leasing office over at Hanover, you will be sent back over to SEB Housing to complete your final program eligibility review. And at that point, that's when you'll need to submit verification of the income, asset, tax documentation that you've reported on your initial lottery application. You'll have about 10 days to get all that information into us. So if you haven't already taken a look at our website, there is a listing on sebhousing.com. If you click on affordable housing opportunities and select I want to rent, you will find a page specific to Hanover, Weymouth. And there'll be a downloadable version of the lottery application as well as the information packet. The information packet contains most of the information that I'll be covering tonight. So even if you are attending this session, we do recommend that you take a look at that information packet, just because there's some information in there that I may not be able to get to tonight. So if you choose to apply for one of the affordable units, you will first need to complete the lottery application. And there's a few different ways that you can get that into us once you have completed it. The most popular way is to just scan or email it to us. There's also a fax number that you can send. That number is on the first page of the application. If you prefer to send it by regular mail, you can do that, or you can drop it off in our 24-hour drop box at our office in Needham if you're in that area. All of that information is on the first page of the application, so you'll see it there. We do encourage you to get your lottery application in early. It's fairly brief, so it shouldn't take you all that long to complete, because no supporting income, asset, or tax documentation is necessary at this early stage in the process. So you're just self-reporting what your income is, all the household members that you have, and submitting that application. We'll review it, and if you're preliminarily eligible for the affordable housing program, you will be approved to be part of the lottery. So applications are due by June 17th, so a little bit less than a month from now. In order to be considered for the lottery, they do need to be postmarked by that date or sent to us by email by that date. You don't need to be a resident of Weymouth to apply for this lottery. There are several units that are going to have local preference for residents of Weymouth or people who work full-time within Weymouth. I'll discuss that a little bit later on as well, but it shouldn't deter you at all from applying. Because like I said, it's only some of the units, and we obviously don't know how many Weymouth residents will be applying. So the first move-ins are expected to be this summer. So coming up, the lottery is in early July, and the units are expected to be ready for July and August. So there won't be too much of a delay between the lottery and then hopefully your approval and when you could sign a lease. Okay, so the units themselves. So Hanover, Weymouth, it is a new luxury pet-friendly apartment community. There's easy access to downtown Boston with Route 3 being pretty close by. Also provides access to towns on the South Shore. There's a total of 270 apartment homes in this community. 20 of them are going to be rented through this lottery process to households that have incomes at or below 80% of the area median income for the Weymouth, Boston area. So at Hanover, Weymouth, there is, the amenities featured there are a pool with some outdoor, shaded areas as well, a fully equipped fitness center, a social lounge, private meeting rooms for remote working or other activities, and affordable tenants, and really every tenant, I believe, at the property pays their own utilities. So that includes the cost of gas, which is heat and hot water, electricity, which includes cooking, and then water and sewer. So tenants are responsible for those charges, and there's sub-meters for that. Surface parking located at the property is available on a first-come, first-served basis for all residents. It's free, it's included. And if you want to reserve a garage space or a surface space to make sure that you have that, that would be an additional charge. Pets are permitted, subject to restrictions. So there's usually breed restrictions for dogs and things like that. So the leasing office will have, if you need more information on that, will have information for you further down the line. So as you can see from your screen here, so there, for the one bedrooms, there's one bathroom. The rent is $2,371. There are 11 one bedrooms. There is one bedroom that is built out for persons with mobility impairments. So it is considered to be disabled accessible. There's 8 two-bedroom affordable units, and that rent is going to be $2,639. And then there's one 3-bedroom affordable unit, and the rent is $2,921. So those affordable unit rents are not set in accordance to an applicant's income or financial circumstances. That means the rent isn't going to change if your income changes. This isn't a voucher program that some of you may be familiar with, where if you have an income decrease, then your rent decreases as well. So instead, for this housing program, the rents are set using a formula that's based off of HUD, which is Department of Housing and Urban Development, area median income for the Weymouth and Boston area. So the rent could increase once per year. Usually that's around the time that HUD revises their area median income each spring. There would always be advanced written notice to tenants when that is about to occur, and there would be no middle of your lease rent increase. So these will be the rents for at least the first year of your tenancy. So since there's going to be more interested and eligible applicants than there are available units, that's why we need to do this lottery to confirm that certain households on the waiting list have access to select apartments first. So I've covered sort of the logistics, this basic overview of the apartments at Hanover Weymouth. So please let me know if you have any questions, and I'm going to move on to the eligibility process. So the eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program. Anyone applying for this lottery or renting one of these affordable units will need to qualify for the affordable housing program. And there's 4 basic eligibility requirements. The first is, as I've kind of already mentioned, households have to have qualifying income and assets. So the parameters are on your screen right now. The maximum income limit is a program requirement. So if you're a household of 1, you need to have a total household income, a gross total household income, so before taxes, of no more than $91,200. And to be able to qualify as a 1-person household, or I should say for a 1-bedroom, you would need to make at least $71,000. So I'll talk a lot more about those figures in just a few moments as well. The second eligibility criteria to keep in mind for eligibility purposes is that household priority is going to be given based on household composition. So what that means is larger households are going to have priority for larger units. So for example, if you're a 1-person household, or maybe you're a couple who shares a bedroom, you're generally considered to be a type 1 household. You're going to see these designations on your application as well. You can apply for a 2-bedroom unit, but larger type 2 households are going to be placed ahead of you on the 2-bedroom waiting list. So they're going to have more favorable positions on the waiting list than you will as a type 1 household. The third eligibility criteria, applicants can't own a home. So all homes, if you own a home now, you need to sell it and be off the deed before you're able to apply for a unit at Hanover Weymouth. And then finally, the 4th eligibility criteria, it doesn't come up very often, but households can't have financial interest in the development and can't be considered a related party. So the units being offered at Hanover Weymouth are being offered by Hanover Limited Partnership. If you work for that developer or the management company, you may not be eligible for this opportunity. And so to circle more and talk a lot more about the first eligibility criteria, so the income and assets of your household. So since these are affordable units, the rents are being made available at prices that are a lot lower than identical units within the property. The maximum limits, as you can see, are set by household size. So that includes everyone living in your household. These amounts are listed everywhere. They're on the application. They're in the income. They're in the information packet. So you'll be familiar with those if you're reading the materials. Again, we don't need your income verification, like your pay stubs and things like that, until later on in the process. But I do still want to give you an overview of how we count your income. So income for this program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months. And it is your gross income. So like I said, before taxes, even though most of us don't take home the full amount on our paycheck, there's, health insurance, taxes, that sort of thing. We do on this program need to count the gross amount for your income if you are earning a wage. And that includes every household member. So the only exception to that is if you have a child in your household, so someone under the age of 18 that is earning a wage, we're not going to count their wage income. And then if you have a dependent full-time student who's maybe, in college or something, if they're working, we only count $480 of the wages towards your household income when we're determining your eligibility. So how we calculate income is not one size fits all because everyone's income circumstances are unique. So some applicants are going to have a weekly salary that's consistent throughout the year. Other people, though, are self-employed. They might be working seasonally. In those circumstances, we might need to look further back into the past to be able to project what your anticipated income is for the next 12 months. And then specifically for applicants who are self-employed, you are going to need to complete a profit and loss statement for your business because we will be able to take your business expenses into account. But if you're not self-employed, unfortunately, we're not able to take expenses into account like, car payments, health insurance, that sort of thing. So in general, any income that you have been making, we are going to need to assume that you're going to continue making it going forward, unless we have some sort of definitive documentation stating that you're no longer going to be earning that income source going forward. So maybe you switched jobs recently. We would just need something in writing from your former employer to confirm your end date, that sort of thing. We will, once you're approved for the lottery, we will send you a link to a documentation requirements guide. So what that guide is just giving you kind of a synopsis of what we will need you to submit. So how many pay stubs, what year of tax returns, all of that sort of thing. So you'll have more of an idea of what you actually need to submit after the lottery takes place if you're moving forward in the process. So when you're filling out your application, just make sure that you're listing everything, not just wages, but if you have Social Security payments coming into the household, retirement accounts, pension, unemployment benefits, that sort of thing. For the affordable housing program, there's no minimum income required, but as you can see on your screen, most management teams do, including the management team at Hanover Weymouth, wants to make sure that all tenants, regardless of whether or not the unit that they're renting is market rate or affordable, they want to make sure that you can afford to pay the rent each month. So the management company has set a minimum household income that is equivalent to 2.5 times the monthly rent. Those amounts are on your screen now. So roughly for a one bedroom, you would need to make at least $71,000. For a 2-bedroom, $79,000, and $87,000 for a 3-bedroom. So that means that your income would need to be between that minimum amount and the maximum income amount. Anyone who has a Section 8 voucher or other housing voucher can disregard those minimum income amounts because they're not going to apply to you, because the agency that issues your voucher will obviously be paying for a portion of your rent based on your income. So that's why the minimum income amounts are not applicable to you. If you don't have a voucher, though, your household income needs to be between that minimum income floor and the maximum income limits for the program. There is a little bit of wiggle room with that minimum income amount, though, because it's not a program requirement. It's going to be the leasing office's call as to whether or not your household fits or meets that minimum requirement. So you might have, sizable amount of money in your bank account, for example. If you have liquid assets that you're able to access, they may determine that even though you maybe don't have exactly $71,000 as someone who's going to rent a 1-bedroom, you have enough money that you could draw from. So it's going to be their call in terms of whether or not you meet that minimum income requirement. So those maximum income limits are more set in stone. There's no asset limit for rental opportunities. So you could be, a retired person that has a sizable amount of assets. That's fine. That's not going to disqualify you from this rental opportunity. Even though there is no rental limit, though, we are still going to need to collect your asset information. So bank statements and that sort of thing to be able to confirm or see if any of your assets are generating income that would need to be counted toward the total household income. So when we're talking assets, when you're filling out your application, you're going to see that it's not just, checking and savings accounts. We would also need to see the net cash value of any 401ks, retirement accounts, that sort of thing. Even your Venmo or PayPal accounts if you have one. We don't need documentation, though, about personal assets like jewelry or your car or anything like that. It's just really the accounts that we're looking into. All right, so that's really it about the eligibility criteria for the housing program and sort of the lottery itself. Again, just a reminder, any questions, please let me know. I'm going to talk about the lottery eligibility and the lottery itself next. Once we receive your lottery application, it's going to be reviewed. We'll contact you if there's anything that's missing from that application, and you'll have a chance to, of course, resubmit and get that completed for us. If you're found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent an email. with your lottery application number. So that number is going to be in the form of a dot, a series of numbers. So that's not a ranking of any sort at this point. It's just meant to be an anonymous identifier. So your name is not going to be called during the lottery or anything like that. It's not going to be listed on the waiting list. It's just going to be this number that you know means it's identifying your household. So if you're the very first person to submit an application and have an approval come from us, your number is going to be A.001. The letter that you receive, that email that you receive with your lottery application number, it's also going to confirm whether or not you have indicated on your application that you either live full-time or work full-time in Weymouth, because in that case, you would have local preference for some of these waiting lists. So local preference could apply to your household. Again, if you live in Weymouth, work full-time in the town, not even just for the town, but any business located within the town, or if you have a child that attends Weymouth Public Schools. 14 of the units at Hanover Weymouth are going to have local preference. So that means that local preference households will have priority for those units compared to households who don't have local preference. And then there's more information too about local preference in the last page of the information packet. But again, that should not dissuade anyone who doesn't live in the town to apply, because like I said, we don't know how many residents are going to apply. And of course, everyone is applying for different unit sizes and that sort of thing. So the email again with your lottery application number is also going to confirm if you've indicated that you need a unit that has disabled accessible features. So one of the affordable units at Hanover Weymouth is built out for persons with disabilities. So if you are someone who requires the features of a disabled accessible unit, you're going to have priority on those waiting lists for the unit versus people who don't need the accessible features. And then, like I said, that email is also going to have the documentation requirements guide. So it gives you more information on next steps and what information we'll need to collect from you after the lottery. If at any point in the process you're found to be ineligible for the lottery, maybe you're over income based on what you self-reported, you're going to be informed by email as well. And you're always encouraged to contact us with any questions about the denial. All right, so the lottery itself is going to be held on July 8th. At 6 p.m. So it's going to be the same format as this information session. It's going to be held on Zoom. I'm likely going to be digitally randomizing the lottery application numbers so that I'll be screen sharing for you so you're able to see the lottery results. And after the lottery, the waiting lists will be generated. So during the lottery itself, every lottery application number will have a place in the drawing. Sometimes when you think of lotteries, you're just thinking, okay, there's 20 affordable units, so there's going to be 20 numbers drawn, but that's not how it's going to work here. We run the lottery to be able to establish the waiting list for each unit size. Again, not everybody is applying for all the bedroom sizes. Not everybody has the same priority in terms of their household type or local preference. So we need to take all of that into consideration after the lottery to be able to sort these waiting lists. And then, of course, there's going to be households who were entered into the lottery and either changed their mind after the fact, or maybe they're found ineligible by the leasing office and they don't move forward in the process. So if you're one of the households who is maybe further down on one of these waiting lists, you shouldn't lose hope at being able to move forward in this process to rent one of these apartments, because there's going to be people ahead of you on the waiting list who drop off. And so after the lottery, like I said, I'll be generating the waiting list. You will get an email from me hopefully that night or the next morning after the lottery, and you'll be able to see where you fall on the waiting list. And at that point, you'll be able to kind of have a clearer picture as to whether or not you're going to be called forward to the next step in the process, which is to apply for the lease. So doing that lease screening with the leasing office. When you're going to submit your, or when they're probably going to be doing some credit checks and things like that. And we'll connect you with the management team as well, so you're able to get that done within about a week or so. And then if the leasing office has approved you for their lease eligibility screening, you'll come back to SEB Housing for your final program eligibility review. You want to be aware that the leasing office is likely going to invite more households to complete their lease screening than there are available units. So for example, at Hanover Weymouth, there are 8 two-bedroom affordable apartments. They're probably going to be inviting more than 8 households forward to complete their lease screening. That's very typical of management companies, just because they don't want the process of leasing the apartment slowed down by households who either maybe don't qualify or don't follow through. So it's possible that you'd be called forward but wouldn't be able to move forward in reserving one of the apartments. So even if you're one of the first households on the waiting list, we always caution people, we don't want you to, if you're currently renting, we don't want you to give notice to your current property owner if you are one of the top households on the waiting list, because you still have a few more screenings to go through to be able to reserve and rent one of these apartments. So the lease screening and your final eligibility screening with us. So just wait until you have the green light from both the leasing office and SEB Housing. So if you are one of those households who's been approved, you've gone through all the screenings, you have, you're one of the top households on the waiting list, you're going to be able to reserve an apartment. If you're the first household, for example, on the 1-bedroom waiting list, you'll have the first choice at any of the affordable 1-bedroom apartments. And then you can make a decision based off of what is important to you. So maybe you are looking for an apartment on the first floor, for example, or a unit that's available for a certain month. You can make that decision. So like I said, final step in the process is to have your final eligibility review with SEB Housing. So you're going to submit all of your income, asset, and tax documentation after the fact, and hopefully we will be able to approve you. We'll work with you. There's a lot of information that needs to be submitted, so it's typical that usually it's not, the first try where a household is submitting all of the information to us and everything is 100% complete. But we'll work with you, by email and phone and all of that. So once you've leased, you're done with screenings. You don't have to do any more income screenings or anything until at least your lease renewal date. So if you lease up in an apartment at Hanover Weymouth, say on August 1st of this year, probably about 3 months before August next year, so sometime in May or sometime in the spring, you'll hear from their management team because they will need to begin your lease renewal process, and you'll have to submit pay stubs and things like that to them at that point. But at least, for 9 months or so, you'll have nothing that is necessary to be sent to SEB Housing or to the leasing office. And then hopefully once your lease renewal comes up, we hope that you've loved living in the apartment and you want to continue and renew your lease beyond that first year. If you do, that's when you'd need to recertify with them. And then if your income has increased and is now above that 80% of area median income, that's fine, because households remain eligible for the affordable housing unit as long as your income is now at or below 140% of the area median income. So to give you an idea of what that kind of means, so a household of 2 to qualify for this lottery has to make below $104,200. That same family can make up to about $145,800 at the time of their recertification next year in order to remain eligible for the affordable housing apartment. So a little bit of wiggle room there. You don't have to think that, if you get a raise or anything like that, that you're going to need to move out of the apartment or start paying market rent, because that's not the case. That's kind of all I wanted to get through. Again, you can find that lottery application as your first step. You can find it on our website under Hanover Weymouth. You can submit it to us in one of several ways, by email to info@sebhousing.com, or you can mail it to us if you feel more comfortable with that. So I'll pause again. Any questions before I let you go? We always recommend checking out that the information packet as well that's on the website. And again, the application deadline is June 17th, so about 3 weeks from now, a little more than 3 weeks from now is when they're due. And if you think of any questions after tonight that didn't pop into your head, you can email us at info@sebhousing.com, and we will look forward to getting your application. All right, if there's no questions, I hope you have a good night, and I appreciate you joining. Have a good night.